Anton Anfilov is called the Crimean Mulder. Like a movie hero, he is looking for truth about flying saucers. Anton's interest in this topic arose when he saw a UFO with his own eyes. Right above the city, I saw an object of complex shape. The craft was huge and black, and glowed with lights along the contour. I believe I know almost all models of aircraft and helicopters. I can distinguish terrestrial aircraft from the unearthly. It was an absolutely amazing spectacle. It had a red light on the nose and yellow lights on the outline. It was huge, perhaps 150 feet in length. The ship silently sailed over Anton and disappeared in an instant. Now a university teacher, he has set himself the goal of finding out who manages such aircraft. The research took him far away, and as it turned out, there is a whole world filled with vast alien and intelligence community conspiracies. The number of UFO sightings around the world has increased dramatically since World War II. It is customary to explain this in three versions. 1. The Nazis still managed to create disc-shaped aircraft, and later these vehicles and their blueprints were obtained by the USA. 2. A second arms race contributed the creation of alternative types of weapons and ships. 3. The third is that with the beginning of the nuclear era, there was a threat of the destruction of the planet, and which provoked a response. Is it because they are living here underground? From now on, the number of contacts with aliens began to increase, and many people reported telepathic contact. In short, the game of studying UFOs, on the Russian front, began with researcher Anton Anfilov. Looking at satellite images of American military bases, he noticed something. While the photo was retouched, there was something they forgot to hide north of Indian Springs Air Force Base in the state of Nevada at a military training ground. That or there is an anomalous structure on the surface of the Earth, which cannot be explained by any other terrestrial explanations of the activities of the military training ground that has everything there, because there are no regular roads there, nor even any access roads, only a very difficult mountainous rugged terrain. Information about underground bases of aliens is confirmed by the former American military Charles Hall in the 60s. He served in the U.S. Air Force at the Nellis Training Ground, which is located near the air base in Indian Springs, and allegedly repeatedly communicated with beings living there, the Tall Whites, a non-human race. They lived and worked on the ground with the approval of the American government. Contact has long been made with an alien race via the military political establishment that is the United States. It is many years old and traces its history from an incident researchers believed happened not in 1947, Roswell, but in October of 1941. That year, in the state of North Carolina, a UFO shaped like an egg crashed. Its crew consisted of 4 tall humanoids with milky white skin. They survived and were taken to a secret bunker where they died a few weeks later. The Americans supposedly concluded that they died from hunger, as they did not eat any of the food that was offered to them. It is suggested that they may not have been able to eat human food and may have been clones specifically created for the purpose of giving the Americans evidence of extraterrestrial life. If not clones exactly, perhaps avatars for those who prefer not Earth's surface. We believe the White House covered up the event and used it as an excuse to start a conversation with the aliens. Most thought military General President Roosevelt would never have believed a story about a UFO with 4 occupants. However, there is a long-told tale where the aliens offered their technologies in exchange for permission to experiment on, without their knowledge, U.S. citizens. Supposedly this was covered up with the very height of security. Farmer William Raziel, in 1947, found on his farm what appeared to be a crashed UFO. In summary, a silvery disk, a prominent object, and a lot of incomprehensible debris collapsed there. Military balloons were created, Project Mogul, to spy on the Soviet nuclear program, but the Americans pretended to have obtained the wreckage of the alien ship. They even approved the shooting of a documentary about it. As they say, there is no smoke without fire. It is believed that contact with aliens nevertheless did take place earlier, and Roswell was a pretend version of what happened years prior. The aliens met at a military base with U.S. President Dwight Eisenhower and agreed to cooperate. They offered some of their technology, and in return they wanted to get permission to experiment on the human population. The aliens allegedly bargained for 2% of the U.S. population with conditions to brainwash abductees so they never remember. But either the aliens lost count or there is a guise of people being abducted by other aliens. And not only in the United States, in Russia as well. Anastasia Artemenko is one of these unfortunate people. Right in the center of the city in the evening rush hour, she crossed a busy intersection. Suddenly she was hit by a bright white light, and an unusual creature appeared on the lawn. In the street a man of unusual stature, and thought he was wearing such a costume. I would say my subconscious thought it was a man dressing up as an alien, but I never gave it my full attention. I figured out for myself later why I perceived it as I did. This is how vendors are dressed along the street. There are all sorts of carnivals in the area, so I think this is why I was slow to realize. In a squeaky metallic voice the being asked Anastasia if she wanted to fly into space. The only thoughts Anastasia had were those about how she was in a hurry to go home and cook for the children. Dinner was all in her thought, but she playfully responded jokingly, "I would like to, but it is very expensive." The being says, "We can sort of arrange it." And then I looked closer at him. I looked into his eyes. The eyes are large and there are no pupils, and I think that's when I started to realize it wasn't a man in a costume at all. The eyes were hypnotic, but at the same time just like real eyes. She woke feeling nausea. She appeared to be in a cigar-shaped UFO. She was sitting in an armchair of sorts, in front of a screen that showed her both the past and the future. I saw it, and I thought to myself that the time machine turns them in one direction. It shows what will happen in the future, and then spins in the other direction in very high speed, and they shows the past. Apparently all life is visible, both a future and a past. As the UFO flew towards the sea, Anastasia saw the Crimean coast through the window. Upon approaching the infamous Bear Mountain, a door of earth seemed to open, and inside the mountain there turned out to be the huge base. Aliens were inside. The woman saw a huge hangar and over a dozen flying saucers. The UFOs rested on supports. Aliens, here they were, strange to understand how it would be possible. It appeared as if they were there doing something to repair or service the crafts. Anastasia remembers only vague memories, unfortunately. She remembers seeing some medical experiments being performed on other people. She did not remember returning home, and was gone for 8 hours. Was unable to tell her loved ones where she had been. While under hypnosis, Anastasia very clearly indicated that part of her memory was erased. The fact is, there exists many repressed memories for those who lived through this time. As a whole, these beings are better known in the USA due to a more free media. However, in the Soviet Union they were also seen to observe and abduct humans. Around this time a new type of being started to be seen. At first they were thought to be members of some national intelligence group, but their animalistic nature quickly changed that notion. First reported in America, thereafter in Europe and everywhere else. Some strange, very human-looking bipedal beings that were almost never alone. There were usually 3 of them. They were all dressed in all black, black jacket, black shoes, tie and even a hat. The men in black were interested in eyewitnesses and abductees. Their goal was seemingly to convince people to forget about their experiences. Threats were most common. Repeatedly, people were told the same thing: to simply forget what they saw and live in peace. Ironically, these visits often terrified people to further levels because these men in black, when viewed up close, they seemed very strange. Sometimes their voice, played like a tape recorder, their faces were always without expression. Often reports of a metallic voice. Changing accents, some reported lips never moving but hearing them out loud. On multiple occasions there were reports of anomalies near the feet area. As if they were artificial and from the legs or feet area of the men in black, things that looked like wires and hoses sometimes stuck out. Their skin was deathly pale, their eyes were not visible, sunglasses. They often seemed to wear different equipment. Sometimes suddenly they would grab onto the device seemingly connected to them, and say dramatic things. Such as, "My energy is running out," and "I need to end the conversation," then quickly leaving. Military pensioner Victor is healthy and claims he's seen the men in black with his own eyes. He states he has been repeatedly abducted by aliens. The first time this happened was many years ago on an ordinary weekday evening when he was spending time with his wife. I was watching TV. Suddenly in the room it got dark, all the sounds stopped, there was an eerie silence. Then there was a feeling of smooth weightlessness. I immediately realized that something incomprehensible was happening. It seemed like levitation. But I knew I wasn't causing the levitation, which meant something from the outside was trying to tear me off the sofa and lift me up. I looked at the ceiling and I didn't see the ceiling as such, I saw the sky above the house. And right there, at an altitude of 100 meters, there was a UFO, the shape of a hat, just levitating there. From the center of the UFO came a beam of light which appeared to try to lift Victor onto the ship. He said he did everything he could to avoid being taken. His wife even tried helping. However, he quickly found out this was not a matter of choice. For years Victor was forced to remain silent. He now admits that he participated in experiences with aliens and visited many alien bases on Earth. He says bases have existed for a long time, since the creation of the Earth. The purpose of the bases are to regulate the development of the land itself. The second purpose is in order to control and correct the evolution of mankind on Earth. The third purpose is for the protection of humanity itself on Earth from the impact of various external factors. For example, asteroid impact or harmful radiation coming through space. Victor learned a lot of new information about the role of extraterrestrial civilizations in the history of mankind. He learned about the behind-the-scenes games that are played by the few aware of this information. He badly wanted to share this information with at least his relatives, but the man was persuaded to keep quiet. For some time after the initial experience, men in black often came near his home or followed when he went out. They watched me, how I behave. One time the neighbors came running. They asked me about these strange people that were coming and going, asked why they seemed to be bothering him. It was always 2 or 3 in black suits, tall in black glasses, walked around as if they belonged there. It seemed they were watching what was happening in the apartment complex, if not watching Victor himself. Victor did not seem to be bothered by the frequent visits of mysterious strangers, but one of his neighbors told him he suspected the strange visitors erased their memory. Victor says he knows about the role of men in black from the aliens themselves. They are highly developed humanoid robots with frightening intellect. The men in black with their computer-like minds were able to do things humans could not. The men in black were a few steps ahead. They knew what would happen next, just 1 or 2 steps ahead of time. Due to this, they seemed clairvoyant, but it was likely something akin to quantum computing. And with one look they can cause pain or erase your memory. In the movies we see creatures that have come from other planets. It is shown that the aliens are small gray bald freaks with big eyes. Supposedly they flew from a dying planet. But it's possible these invented Hollywood things are actually mixed with a bit of reality. Over half a century ago, there were witnesses of the US president meeting with aliens referred to as the Tall Whites. The race is also known as the Indigut. They have blue eyes, very interesting audible language. The pronunciation of some of the language is not unlike the barking of dogs. It once described as though it were a mix of South Korean and German, but with harsher consonant sounds. And yes, while it seems impossible, they do have telepathy, there is no doubt about it at this point. Their weapons looks like a little tube like a pencil. They direct it at a person and can simply and easily paralyze them and or make them unconscious. Anton Anfilov has been communicating with his American colleagues. Together they analyzed leaks of classified information. He was ready for shocking info, but the truth turned out to be much worse. It looks like the aliens don't just live at the US military facilities. They're also located at the White House. The Americans hid this, and not just anywhere but right under the Capitol building in Washington, D.C. Aliens use our planet as a landing site and raw material resource. There are similar bases that are controlled by tall white aliens on our moon. Karim Osmanov has visited one of them. He was very different from his peers even as a child. He could see things more clearly and had prophetic dreams and knows his future. Karim was born in a village in Middle Asia where huge orange crafts fly above and creatures with gray suits are seen. Not long ago he woke up in the middle of the night with a strange feeling. I got up from bed and I went outside to the park next to our house. There was a disc-shaped craft standing on the ground. So without being forced, but he thinks someone communicated to him via telepathy, I entered ship. Karim entered the light-filled room and sat in a chair on the ship. There was no one in the craft, that he could see. The disc-shaped craft rose smoothly and noiselessly from the ground while the young man looked out of the porthole and saw our planet from orbit. Based on when I'd watched other popular science programs and also the landing of the Americans, for example, it was very obvious I was on the moon. It could have been nothing else. He says it seems that the moon must be very close to the Earth, saying he got there fast and felt no acceleration. Then the UFO floated over the dead rocky landscape and began to descend into a crater. After a very long descent, suddenly he saw a cave with people. They were dressed as primitive people, that is, no shirts. They were clean and they had clean faces. I want to say that they were miners, maybe, digging something or doing something similar to mining. This was the impression I had. That they just lived there quietly and peacefully, and were not slaves like my mind jumped to suggest. They seemed content. Then he flew out of and over the crater. He remembered nothing after that point and to this day wonders what happened after that moment. He said he received information telepathically, and it's incredibly important to mankind. This is largely because people do not want to be alone in the universe. We are looking for contact. We are seeking contacts that confirm or are similar to our beliefs about what is real, and if they are more advanced than us, they could help us solve nearly all of humanity's problems, will answer the ultimate question regarding of the origin of human life. It's clear these beings have technology well beyond our own. The possession of such tech would mean financial and military superiority for certain groups. This is the real reason governments do not want to uncover these types of secrets. From roughly 1941, there has been a massive military and political cover-up, worldwide. The conspiracy is primarily regarding the concealing of human contact with alien races and further concealment of the obtaining of alien technologies. A very small amount of people, the term secret societies would not be inaccurate, currently use the obtained knowledge and tech for solely their own interests. This secret group now has a monopoly on this situation. So why are aliens seemingly intentionally not exposing themselves to humans, but why interested in non-disclosure of information themselves? As we've all heard it said, aliens could have literally landed on the White House lawn if they wanted. What's with the secrecy if they're already working with humans? Or is this because their goal is subversive? And that is the reason they hide their existence to near all humans. Most initially presumed they were present to study us Earthlings. But if they remain secretive, as they still do, this means that it was not beneficial for the aliens to have contact information with humans on a broad basis. But that doesn't mean they made contact with no humans. To give you an idea how restricted this info is, it is not available even to the administration of the President of the United States. The selected team, which changes every 4 years during its reign, does not have time to learn anything of substantial merit, and when they have reached out to intelligence agencies, they were told they would not be advised and were even admonished for asking. In the United States security system there are dozens of levels of secrecy. The bulk of modern American leaders do not rise above level 17. Access to the nuclear code is included, alien knowledge is not. Additionally, they do not have access to any new information. There is no need to know, so they do not get to know anything. Even if you have all the standard top secret clearances, you do not get to know about the existence of top secret, hidden, so-called black programs and even super black programs. These programs are related to alien technologies. These programs have existed for many years in the United States. Info about alien tech is possessed by a very narrow circle of people, secret society, that rules the world. This group also has its own intelligence agents, and not only in the US. Vladimir Zamaroka worked his entire life in the aviation and space sector, also known as the aerospace industry. During this time he has observed and investigated anomalous phenomenon. Over time, the scientist has collected an impressive dossier, including a file on the men in black. Vladimir Efimovich even met one of them personally back during the time of the USSR. A man was traveling by train, telling stories about UFOs to his companion. In the morning there was a knock on his door. He opened it. It was a man with the height of approximately 6 feet 1 inch, wearing a black hat, black suit and white shirt. There seemed to be a black cape coming down from the hat. I remember seeing a white shirt peeking out from the black suit. The stranger had a ticket to the neighboring compartment but entered ours, and after participating in general conversation he suddenly suggested that Vladimir Yefimovich and his companion retell yesterday's story about the small aliens. His speech was odd with strange emphasis on words and the voice sounded metallic. The man in black's voice sounds as if a tape is playing. His companion was so scared she became ill. After that moment neither Vladimir nor his companion could remember what happened. They only remembered the man in black suddenly disappearing. From that moment on, Vladimir discussed flying saucers only when he was around those he trusted. A few years later, as the editor of a scientific and educational magazine received a letter from a resident of Kaliningrad. The letter states that in her long life she's seen many UFOs, and she has decided to go public with them. She sent him all her manuscripts via letters. As soon as he received them, some interesting things began to happen. When she went to mail her next letter, a very unlikely situation occurred. They told her that the price to mail her manuscripts was $13.60. This was a large amount of money for a pensioner at that time, so she debated. She hesitated as this meant she would need to skip meals. Nevertheless, she paid the high fee and sent the correspondence to the magazine. The pensioner got a bit lost on the way back. Looking dejectedly at the windows, she suddenly stumbled upon a young man dressed in black. The young man in a black suit was very handsome, very friendly, and stood in front of her. As he approached, he said to her, "Could I give you some money?" After he disappeared from view, she counted the money and realized it was exactly $13.60. The exact same amount she spent to send the letters. Why did he help her? Today, half of the world's population believes that aliens exist and visit the Earth. 20% are convinced that aliens have bases in the United States. Such a strong public opinion was developed due to the press and movies constantly referencing this topic. The topic is frequently exploited, but it leaves an intelligent person to wonder, how much of this is real? Why is it that this whole alien visitor synopsis has been manually inserted via movies and books into the mass consciousness? I must say that within recent years the number of men in black experiences have decreased significantly. At least when compared to those experienced in the 50s and 60s. From the memories of the military personnel and declassified archives, it is known that the U.S. intelligence services actively manipulate public opinion. On the CIA's initiative in 1953, a whole new set of measures was developed. This included the tactic of attributing all UFO sightings to natural phenomenon. Later, to ridicule the interests of flying saucers, radio and cinema were used extensively. Then when a random man on the street was a legitimate eyewitness to a UFO, he was instead treated as a liar or a crazy person. There are occasional leaks that are not intentional, but these are hard to validate. The UFO witnesses are usually willing to remain silent in order to keep their reputation or career intact. The media also uses tricks by always telling tales that are only half true. Let's use Roswell 1947 as an example. They claimed interrogation of a living alien who allegedly survived the crash of a UFO. But there was no UFO, only a crashed Mobile spy balloon. In this video, a humanoid/gray alien seems to be tormented, appears as though it is tied to a chair. It appears to become ill. Doctors appear in the frame. The video includes the verbiage, "This film is a non-commercial project." What do you think about this video recording? Is it faked or real? I have met a commander in the U.S. Air Force in Alaska. I flew to Alaska because he was taking away everything from the crash site. They took away the corpses and there was one living, and this thing apparently lived for a whole year. Then a commission was created to investigate everyone involved, ridiculing and discrediting all UFO-related matters. On the 35th anniversary of the October Revolution, Mikhail Pervukhin spoke about UFO reports. He advised that most of the Americans had lost their composure and have just started to stare at the sky, implying they were obsessed with UFOs. Many of them reported they had seen strange things in the sky, strange objects like huge flying saucers and green fireballs. But the UFO appearances weren't only in the US. With my flying experience, I've seen a lot of flying objects over the years. One of the things I think of most is this object I saw in 1967. I saw it while I was working at a flight school. In a 1968 newspaper, Justice totally discredited the UFO sighting. It had published a derogatory article about flying saucers. The existence of aliens was claimed to be only lies and science fiction. After that, the topic was considered closed by many. So I explained to my instructor what I saw, and he listened very carefully. I explained how when I raised the binoculars to my eyes, they burned and went dry. I was told if I wanted to finish school, I'd keep quiet about this. Soviet men in black and the agents who had this information knew their job quite well. Both sides rushed into a space race with the confidence that they will be the first and only single force in space. In 1978 there was a secret UFO study program known as the Network. During the 80s it was renamed Project Galaxy. In 1985 it was again renamed to Project Horizon. This project analyzed all previously collected data. The current terminology is something like Rapid Deployment Brigades were initiated, though existing structures were also used, for example KGB and local law enforcement. In the Ministry of Defense there is a group like this. If a UFO crashes, they are quickly dispatched to investigate. The group initially focused mainly on aviation-related matters such as missiles for aviation equipment. But now the specialists rushed to investigate the mysterious encounters. Strange things were happening that were directly related Russian military bases/security, much like the US has experienced. Further research indicates a more advanced civilization somehow controls us and can also manipulate human consciousness if needed. Military forces have discovered that their facilities have also become a subject to the UFOs. 50th Arvyasin Division, Carpathian District. UFOs appeared out of nowhere and activated the nuclear missile launch system. None of the operators could stop the command. All, even though analog, equipment was blocked. The control of the facility returned the moment the UFOs left. They knew immediately that this was not the Americans and believed that more powerful forces that come from the depths of space. It appears their goal is to make certain we don't destroy Earth. Perhaps if the underground or under-ocean alien base theory is accurate, they do not appreciate all the nuclear bomb testing. We think it's very possible a civilization related to us has done all this in the past. How many cycles of intelligent beings have lived on Earth? We will never know the truth. All we know is crumbs, and these are separated pieces of a huge broken mirror. I have been collecting these pieces for many years, but why? Because not only do the highest military political circles do not want people to know the truth, this is the same motivation that aliens have, as they do not wish all civilization to be aware they are using the powerful technology to drain our resources and materials, seeking whatever they need. Military pilots have received orders to destroy a UFO and obtain wreckage many times. But when the fighter reached it, the attack on the UFO always ended badly. Colonel Alexander Kopykin personally had to fly out to intercept a UFO. In the summer of '82 he tried to enter into a black but seemingly normal storm cloud that appeared directly over only the military base and airport. The diameter of the cloud was roughly 2/3 of a mile. The cloud hung absolutely motionless and was entirely undetectable via their best radar at the time. Contact with the airfield over which the cloud hovered was lost, and the pilot's attempt to simply approach the object almost cost him his life. The plane went out of control, literally, alarms automatically activated and the plane began to shake. Kopykin broke radio contact when the plane lost control and tried to get the plane away from the cloud. He said it seemed very clear the cloud was the issue. He heard an intense sound, at the level of his pain threshold. It was then Kopykin tore off the headset. After a moment he seemed to feel whatever weird energy had affected the plane pass, and he was able to recover the plane's control. To this day he feels he succeeded only by some miracle. When reviewing the occurrence, he thinks he struck along the edge of the cloud, then it seemed as though the plane partially entered another place. He was going approximately 300 miles per hour at the time, zero engine issues. During another training flight, Kopykin's plane had approached another unknown object. But this object had clearly visible lights. The pilot said he felt very strongly as though he were under a hypnotic effect. Suddenly, while flying toward the object, I felt my body become completely paralyzed. I could not look away from this object that accompanied me. It was about 250 feet long. At first I only saw its dark silhouette that covered the stars. Then it was in front of me, like a brightly burning fire in the sky. There was no directional light, like human aircraft require, just a ball-shaped glowing orange and red. Later, Colonel Kopykin was responsible for collecting anomalous information in the southern sector of the Moscow military district. The methodology of calculating the frequency of UFO sightings was one he created himself. His predictions were accurate. The objects appeared roughly where and when he said, and the interval was exactly 1 month 11 days and 2 hours with a margin of error of 10 to 15 minutes on average. Which is, of course, exceedingly accurate. Scientific and technological progress has made a colossal leap forward over the past half-century. Such a rapid development of technology is difficult to believe happened organically. Neither an arms race nor healthy market competition explain it all. It is also believed that many products within the computer science or medical industry could not be made by mere authors of science fiction. Nor could they be made simply from the stories of UFO witnesses. In those inhabited alien bases, the advanced civilizations transfer information. They transmit information to the most developed countries on Earth, such as the US, England, France, and China. Are world powers really cashing in on the use of technology? Or can humanity change the rules? On most levels, these phenomena are still a mystery in many ways. Studies made by ufologists and additional long-term analysis has shown why humanity is frightened about the presence of UFOs. They are often seen hovering over reservoirs and seemingly sucking up, large amounts of water. In rural areas, objects with lights are seen illuminating the earth. Thereafter, minerals appear to have been collected. In the United States, there was a period when a lot of dead animals were found, mostly cow and elk mutilation. While there have been millions of eyewitnesses who have seen things in the night, still, no one truly believes them. What are we, the citizens, getting in return? Wi-Fi? Smart contact lenses? Nanorobots and sensor displays? It seems like we'll bend to anything they ask, as long as we continue to be given tidbits that allow those above us to be more profitable. We will never know the truth. All we know is crumbs, and these are separated pieces of a huge broken mirror. I have been collecting these pieces for many years, but why? Because not only do the highest military political circles do not want people to know the truth, this is the same motivation that aliens have, as they do not wish all civilization to be aware they are using the powerful technology to drain our resources and materials, seeking whatever they need. Could all of this really be happening? Non-human beings that to us are beyond genius and known only to a few powerful people but live on Earth? Once over Tehran, a UFO hung in the air for several hours. 2 jets took off and started firing at the object. They unloaded on the UFO, using all weapons they had on board. The UFO was undamaged. The object proceeded to land on outskirts of the area where a huge crowd of people had collected. It was in broad daylight. 2 bipedal beings in silver uniforms came out of the craft. The beings waved, then made a fist and walked back into the craft. The legend of gray aliens and flying saucers has penetrated our social consciousness. At this point, it is present in children's media and in serious literature. Not everyone believes, but almost everyone has heard about them. Maybe that's how it is supposed to be. Perhaps the men in black, their masters, and the true motives are to remain in the shadows forever.